Milsurp Garage. The United States Rifle Caliber 3006 model 1903. So yeah, what a history this thing has, huh? What a history. So, story here is basically that we were up against the Spanish Mauser, the 1893 Spanish Mauser. And we were using the Krag. And when all that was said and done, we were like, let's make one of those. And we actually did have to pay... royalties. I think like the greatest royalties were really for this Spitzer bullet too that we kind of glommed onto with the 3006. I think that was the biggest payout, was that the Spitzer bullet was kind of that was a patent that we acquired. But from what you hear, war and everything kind of all got in the way of any type of money collection for these kinds of things. What do they say? All's fair in love and war. So that was the story. I've done a video on this rifle before, but I just figured that maybe now with this newer camera, where we could kind of, we should be able to get in like real nice and close, So Rock Island Arsenal. That's what we see right here. So when I was going to get one of these, I wanted a Rock Island version. There are Springfield Armory ones and Rock Island ones. And I always kind of like to go for that underdog thing. Like if there's one that's less common, that's just kind of interests me, as much as everyone is always like, oh, that's an 03 Springfield. I always just kind of wanted to be able to be like, well, kind of, but not really. I like that. But let's go through what this thing, this thing's been through a lot. So let me just break it down and then I'll show you the different things. This one, the serial in the 287,000 range is just above the 285,507 number, which is supposed to be when the improved heat treatment kicked in. But there's a lot involved. I'm going to show you. There's a book I got here called Rock Island Rifle, model 1903 by C.S. Ferris. This is the book to have if you're going to want to read specifically about the Rock Island stuff. There's so much on the 03 Springfield, but to just have a specific Rock Island book is great. And this book is awesome because what this book does is it actually has stuff that's so detailed that it actually has stuff like I had a bookmark in and then I yanked it out. It actually has stuff like this, like steel lot numbers with barrel dates. That's crazy. It gets super, super detailed, this guy, this book. And it tells about how during this, if you don't know about this heat treatment thing, apparently sometime during production, and in Rock Island there were two phases of production. There was one production from 04 to 13, and then they cranked up production again when World War I hit in around 1916 or something like that, 16 or 17, we started at Rock Island. We started making them again in that armory. And Springfield Armory also had some issues. They have their own numbers that you'd have to research to find out what the numbers are, where they realized there was some kind of problem with how they were doing the heat treating. They were basically eyeballing the heat treatment process, and that wasn't a good idea because, as good as these guys are, or as good as that worked around the turn of the century, by 1917 there were better ways to tell when the steel was ready to be quenched, or how hot you were heating it and things like that. It's very important, those things, as far as for strength. Now, if you're building like a hammer or a shovel, it doesn't really matter as much. When you're building something like a rifle, that's got to take like some serious abuse, like explosions going on. They were failures. So then they ironed out the heat treatment process, and supposedly you could just baseline, this is a number I hear a lot, is the 285,000 lot, like in the middle of that, 285, 500, around there was where they started cranking out the ones with the new improved heat treatment process. So this one, obviously just a couple of thousand over that, would have been deemed okay. But you could tell from this parkerized finish right away that there's refurbishment going on here. So let me discuss a little bit about what exactly this refurbishment stuff consisted of. So this is a 1918 dated gun. Where is that date? I could have sworn it had the date on it somewhere. Maybe not. Didn't this thing have a date on it, for crying out loud? I could have sworn somewhere on this thing was just a straight up date. Well, I guess not, but 1918 is the production date, the manufacturing date, and the barrel is marked August of 31, so that's when it had a big re-arsenal. So when it was re-arsenaled, they must have replaced the stock, because this stock, spin it around over here, this stock has this marking on it right here. Let me see if I could zoom in and catch the light just right. Okay, so you could see right here there's a BHM in a box. That's not the easiest thing to see. There, you can see the B there. There's a BHM here, and then SADAL. So the BHM is for, it's a Springfield Armory inspection mark from 06 to 09. So it's an older Springfield Armory stock. But then this is stamped later on. This was stamped later on. It's an inspection stamp for Springfield Armory Inspector Daniel A. Leary. That's where the DAL comes from. And he was the inspector from 31 to 33. So that coincides with, this Springfield Armory re-arsenal stamp for August of 31 on the barrel. So it was in 1931 that it received a re-arsenal, and the bolt is marked with this NS nickel steel stamp, which was a Springfield Armory stamp from mid-1930 to mid-1939, with this swept back, see this swept back bent bolt thing going on here. So that also coincides with that 1931 thing going on. But there's a couple of things with this, like it has a smooth butt plate that was from 1917 to 1920. So that fits in with its actual manufacture. So somewhere along the line, either the butt plate got carried over, who knows how so. Well, it could just be a re-arsenal that they just grab one out of a bucket, you know what I mean, out of a big vat of butt plates, and that's just what it happened to be. So yeah, so boy, that's a lot going on there. And this parkerization, I believe, it was more like a World War II type of thing when this parkerization might have come. But as far as any re-arsenaling after that, I mean, I don't know. That's where the limit of my knowledge on these things goes away. So now the comparison with the Mauser designs. Let's first, let me get the bayonet out of the way. I'll show you. Don't let me forget the bayonet. But what I want to do is I want to bring the crag back in here, because I want to show you how, even though we were into departing from the crag, I don't know exactly why this is, but we carried over a lot. There we go. We carried over a lot. As you can see, here is the magazine cutoff on the crag, and right where the soldier would expect to see it is the magazine cutoff for the 03. Safety, very similar. You know, so you look at it, it looks like the same part. These are always tough. I think if it's not charged, it won't. Oh, it is charged, so it should come across. These weren't the easiest things to. They cam the sear out of the way, so they're like really tough to move. But look at the cocking piece. Even look at the similarity in the cocking piece. They departed completely from the action of the crag, but they didn't want to let go some of these little features, you know what I mean? And you gotta kind of wonder what the reasoning was behind that. You know, maybe they didn't want it to seem too obvious that they were just blatantly ripping off the Mauser. Now the crag, let's get the crag bolt out. Lift up here. This is always a tough angle to do this at. There we go. And you can see, basically, the crag had a magazine. Let's get some of our realistic snap caps here. We're going to play with our realistic snap caps for a bit. If you're interested in getting a hold of some of these, take a look in the description of this video, and you could order some of these guys. These things are awesome. So basically, you have there is a magazine here, as you can see. It's just curved around. See that? And by closing this, here's the follower is right here. And when you close this, the follower goes up against the rounds, and there's your spring-loaded action. And that's what's the bolt getting caught here is what's feeding the rounds in. There is a feed ramp here, right there, that the rounds are getting fed up and in from. The thing about it is that it's push fed, just the way you see me pushing it with my finger is how the bolt pushes the rounds in, just like that, the same exact way, push fed. And they're not captured. So what that means is that we were messing around with this before. So what that means is that if we push the round in, we're not capturing that round. As a matter of fact, if I pull this all the way back and push again, we'll pick up the next round. You don't actually capture that round until you turn the bolt down. And then when you do, you pick up the round underneath the extractor. See? And then, again, the next round. See? That round isn't getting picked up. It's just flopping around in there until you turn down on it. Whoa, that was crazy. You saw that? I'll never be able to do that again. Well, I don't know. It seems to be flipping where that could be something that's pretty common. That was the most acrobatic thing I've ever seen a crag do. See if you can find another video on YouTube where a guy does that with a crag. Doubt it. So, what was the big difference with the Mauser now? How did the Mauser blow everybody away? Well, first of all, it's not so much these stripper clips, because they were kind of messing with stripper clips with the crag too. It wasn't so much the ammo delivery. So yeah, it might have been a pain in the neck to juggle around rounds and put them in that box, but that wasn't it. It was basically, the magazine isn't really much different. It's just straight up and down instead of curving around. Okay, but what's the big difference here? We were looking at it with the Spanish Mauser, so they might have messed around with their little magazine cut off and their cocking piece knob and all of that, but what they stole that really made this the animal that it was, like the Mauser was that just by closing the bolt this much, we have control of the round, as you can see. So all you really needed was that much, and you had it. So if it got hung up or it got stuck, you could eject it. That was it. You remember we were doing this with the Mauser. It's pushing it up out of the magazine the same way. When it gets to a certain point, it goes up underneath the extractor, underneath it, and it gets captured. There's no need to turn the bolt down. It's got it already. Controlled feed. So when you're closing the bolt, it's quiet, so you don't hear anything. It's already underneath the extractor. And if you pull the trigger here, you're cocking this on open. This is cock on open here. Whereas the Chilean and the Spanish Mauser were different. This is more like the K98, more like the true German K98. So they went with a cock on opening design. You can see the cocking piece here. Whoa! That was violent. Rounds flipping around, smashing into the camera. So that was the big deal. So that was a big deal, believe me. That's what made the Mauser the champion that it was. Let me get these out of the way. So a couple of other things. I'm going to show you a little bit from that book again. But the sight. Look at this sight. I forgot. I don't want to say that this is the... I didn't write anything in my book. I want to say that this was the Buffington rear sight, but I'm not 100% sure. Let me look at my book. Let's get out the book. Let's check out... Let's take a quick look at the book first. Here, see, so this book is cool. It shows the first production. First, it just shows a lot about the history of Rock Island Arsenal. Whoa, I know I'm flipping fast. Sorry. It just shows a lot about the history of the arsenal itself. Kill this light for looking at books. I notice always works a little better. Maybe zoom out just a touch, and then it touches on the first production period. Which, see, the sights were different. What sight? What does that look like? See that sight right there? Look, watch, check this out. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Here's the Krag sight. How do you like that? And this was like the later. Remember when we looked at my Krag? We were looking through the Krag book, and the sight I had on my Krag, I have a later, much later Krag, not one of the early ones. So these were on the first of the 03 Springfields. And then here it is. Rear sight on an RA, an original 1905 modification rifle in the Rock Island Museum. Oh, because of where the graduations are. Has something to do with it, I guess. And then you see this stock. I have an S on mine here. It shows this Rock Island stock with small S. I have the small S here. That's the early one that denoted. Remember I showed you that the stock was actually an early stock, a 1900 something. This is a very early furniture here. You know. Very historical furniture on this rifle, which I didn't really know till later on. I just knew that the Rock Island thing was important to me. And so as far as sights go, they're just, I don't see that word Buffington in here. I don't know why I'm thinking that, but sorry guys, I didn't do my site research, but this is a incredibly complex site. And basically, you could just use it by looking through. Let me zoom in a little bit. Sure, this is pretty cool. You could just use it by looking through this right here. And, sorry for the shake. Why is it shaking so much? Oh, I can't touch the table. You could look through this right here, this notch. Or, let me just zoom back just a touch. Or, you could stand it up, right? So now let's just say it's standing up. You're not going to be able to see anything from this view because you're looking down on it now. But let's just say it was in the standing up position. Then you have a point with a bullet. Then you would have this right here to look through, this notch. And that notch is the notch that's adjustable up and down. But if you look, there's this whole thing that's traveling with it here. And inside of there, you have a aperture that you could use. See that? Like, how exacting that is. That's crazy, right? And then, and this would lock on, right? And then not only that, you had a windage control here, up here, that you would turn this and you had a gauge. You had a gauge back here that you would be able to adjust windage. Yeah, I'll turn it a little bit. I'll show you. Look how exacting that is too, right? Sick. They were really into this whole marksmanship, man. They were still with the magazine cut off. So it's just like one round at a time. And all this cutoff really did was, this middle position is where you would be able to remove the bolt from the rifle, right? That's to take the bolt out. Sorry, I keep forgetting which way zoom is which way. All right, that'll work. So yeah, this middle position is to take the bolt out. That's what that was used for. And then, whoops, you don't have that lined up on the collar. And then you see it's this bolt. Here's the bolt. Here, this is the Milsurp bolt. The non-rotating collar. So you say that it rotates, but what that means is that when the bolt turns, it stays in one spot. Here's this huge extractor. Look at that thing. And those monster locking lugs here. Plus this lockdown back here. Yeah, I'll show you. They had like a secondary lockup thing here. This was like technically you could say it a locking lug that locked into position there. See that? Mauser, that's like almost like an improvement on the Mauser. Like, oh yeah, you think yours is strong? Well, we'll step it up to 3006 smokeless. And we're putting another locking lug. But you see how that's why it's called a non-rotating collar, is because the bolt rotates and it just that extractor just stays in one spot because of this collar here. And all the magazine cutoff does is it just blocks the bolt from going back fully. So you see, you don't even uncover the magazine follower here. So it doesn't even lock the bolt open on the last, for the last, like what, it wouldn't lock the bolt open because you're just firing one round at a time. So you don't need to be notified when your magazine is empty because it's going to be empty every time you eject a round. So it doesn't need that feature. So it kind of like negates that as well. And then if you put it up, it would come back far enough to lock into position. See what I'm saying? And so what that would do is very similar to the Krag, is that you would be able to have some rounds in the mag here. Let's put 3, let's say. You'd be able to, if you have to have the bolt closed to do it, you'd be able to put the magazine cutoff on, and you would not pick up any of those rounds. So now the thing is, it's not push fed. So if you push this in there like that, and now you go to turn the bolt down, you're bumping up against, you'd have, right now it would snap the extractor over the rim of the case. That's a good way to bust that beautiful extractor in there. So the right way to do this is to push this down into the magazine. You say, well, now how's it going to get picked up if you push it down into the magazine? Because the bolt's in the way, so you're pushing it down into the magazine ahead of the bolt. So as you can see, it will get picked up, and this way it'll go underneath the extractor. So if you fire again, you want to load, you would load like that. That's how you would load the single rounds. Bang, open. See, it won't pick up one of those, but you don't just drop it in and close. You would push it down to there and go like that. That's what I would do. If you force the round in there and force it down, it'll snap over the rim and back. I don't think it'll do that much. If you look, this is actually has like an edge to it. It's like guys that really know what they're doing sharpen these, you know what I mean? Like they contour that to be perfect. I would say that one's perfect. It works awesome. So you definitely don't want to be messing with that. But now that I took the bolt out, it will pick up these rounds. The bolt out with rounds in there, will that work? Oh, it has to be here to put it in. That's right. Yeah, it's gonna change it. Oh yeah. RealisticSnapcaps.com. Coupon code Milsurp Garage, 10% off and free shipping. I'm telling you, jump in there. It's so nice to be able to play with these things without having to worry even in the slightest that you're gonna catch around the wrong way or do something silly. And like when I say something silly, you're like, what are you talking about? Let me give you a quick example. Let's just say I load a couple of rounds. Oh, I got the, do I have the cut? No, I don't have the cutoff on. What the hell is just going on right there? All right. I load a couple of rounds, all right? I put the magazine cutoff on, and I'm leaving those in there. And then I throw a round in here to chamber. I close and I go, oh, wait a minute. I forgot I wanted to push it down into the mag so I wouldn't snap the extractor over it. Right, let me and then maybe you get a little distracted. You take the magazine cutoff off and you bang. Why isn't this going? Bang! Explosion. Because if you look in there, you now have the tip of this round right up against the primer of the next one. It could happen. Ouch. It could happen very easily. Trust me. Live ammo is live ammo. And the only way that primer could get hit is from the firing pin. Not only that, you could be messing around. Some of these old, look how old this rifle is. You could just slam the bolt closed, just like, will it chamber the round? Yeah, chamber, and the firing pin could just drop. How the hell, you're gonna trust this sear over here? You gonna trust this here? That's God knows how old. How many different thousands of bolts and all different kinds of conditions are out there. Live animals for the range. So as a comparison with the before we go, just throw up the Chilean right next to it. It's very similar to the 1893. The Mauser was definitely more refined, let's say. It was like a Swiss watch. And the Americans came along, and they definitely made a fine copy of it. But you know how it is with copies. They're good, but you know, Jaws 2 wasn't a bad movie. It's never going to be as good as Jaws. But if you never saw Jaws 2 would be a pretty good movie. It would still be just as good, but you know what I'm saying. The Americans needed to step up their game. And this wasn't the only Mauser design that was, ganked, let's say. There were others. And I mean, it's everything. This magazine floor plate. Oh, look at this Care sling. I love this thing. I'm very proud of this. Let's keep going the wrong way. No matter which way, it's always going to be the wrong way, right? The Care no buckle. It's real. These are one of the most stolen slings, the knockoff ones. But I know somebody's gonna say that mine is. They're gonna say something about the way the rivets are. I'll show you. I'll show it to you close. I'm confident. I'll go way close. This is a no buckle. A Care no buckle. Yep. And they are not cheap now. It wasn't cheap when I got it, but man, they're really out of control now. So that's it. Subdued mood. It's Saturday. And you know what? The harder I try to make these videos good, the greater the chance is that I'm just going to delete it. I'm done. And that's what I made a whole video on this rifle and then just watched it over again and was just disappointed. But I'll give you before I go, I'll just give you a nice run down the whole thing. Let's even back up just a little bit more because I could always put it closer to the camera to get closer. But there's that smooth butt plate. And look, I could show you this. There's a cool door back here. That thumbnail's gone. Oh, and I almost lost that fingernail just now. I guess we're gonna have to go the other way because I am a righty. You know that guy in Saving Private Ryan was a lefty. So it's very distinctive when he shot the rifle. He was shooting the rifle like this, and he had to keep reaching over like this to cycle it. You know what I mean? That was very distinctive, and I remember that what a lefty had to go through to use a bolt action rifle like this. So yeah, I wanted to have like an original style. This is the oiler. We would have some oil in there, and this little thing that was able to divvy it out. And in here is like a cleaning kit. Ooh, that smells like hot garbage. Get that cap on. Come on, it stinks. It smells like Cosmoline. And then look, it's interesting. There's like a rubber button here on the top, so that when this went in here and you closed it, that rubber would got to mitigate the tapping noise of it hitting this cover back there. But I can imagine GIs taking like a piece of cloth and shoving it in there too, if really being quiet was that important to them. So I guess we'll just start on this side. It's not without its bangs and bruises, but definitely I think it held up pretty good through the years. Look at that weird symbol in there. Let's see if we can get a close-up on that. Which way do we go to get closer again? Not that way. This way. There we go. Look at that interesting symbol in there. It's like a E over an F with an R. That's an interesting one. Where were we again? There we go. Oh, the bayonet. You forgot to remind me. I'll show you the bayonet. And interesting, huh? The front sight. Serrated trigger. That dates something. It has a nice couple of really deep gouges right in there. Those are some good ones. But other than that, you know, like, even that, I don't even mean to say other than that. Those gouges are good. Look, it's not a totally flat butt plate. See, it's like it kicks out a little bit here. They were originally totally flat. There's that little kick out right there that they did. They put that little modification like that. Somehow mattered. It mattered. They wouldn't have done it if it didn't matter. It had something to do with when it's flat, it's easy to bend it and then it damages the wood, but with that little bend in it. So this is the bayonet that I have for it, which is a Rock Island bayonet from 1918, which matches the date of the rifle. I had to find that, and I did. I didn't get a scabbard with it, but it's a, you know, original non-cut down one, you know what I mean, where this groove, I forget what it's called, goes ends, and then there's just metal down here, so it's nice, full size without being cut down. And these grips were originally wood, and in World War II these were refurbed with these plastic grips. So it was a refurbishment from World War II times, and definitely goes on here nice and smooth. But that makes for a formidable. Here we go. I'm gonna hit the wall again. I can never get these long bayonets. I can never get the full bayonet in there without hitting the wall. Then it has a nice button here instead of like a button on the side or something like that. Nice button there is kind of unique, kind of different. And what's interesting about the U.S. bayonets is that, like, if I took the Krag bayonet that we had looked at before, they didn't really change anything. You still had the Krag bayonet would still fit on here. And this is the French contract, I believe. Krag bayonet. Was it, or was I wrong? No, this is just a U.S. Krag bayonet. I'm sorry, I take that back. I'm confusing it with a different one because it says U.S. on it right here. That was just a U.S. bayonet. Yep, so there we are, ladies and gentlemen. The 03 Rock Island. Nobody wants to hear that, so somebody said, what is it? I would call it an 03 Springfield, but you can't get away from that. Rock Island Arsenal, model 1903, in the 287,000 block. So you all have a good one, and I guess next it only makes sense to show you. I still wanted to show you where the Browning A5. We did the Browning A5, And then, you know, that we know Remington had a copy of that. And I said, and Remington kept that in their arsenal way into like the 50s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. And I wanted to show exactly where and how, because it's kind of an interesting transition. So I might get into that first, but I'm going to show you the other Mauser that the United States, around the same time too, that the United States glommed onto, another Mauser design, which was much more popular than this guy. So, by probably about 5-1. So we'll see you then. And thanks for tuning in. And yeah, take a look at those snap caps, man. They're a blast to mess around with the rifles, to look at different ways where they function. And do not mess around like that, doing things like that with live ammunition. It's definitely a good idea to use inert stuff to do that. And you all be safe, take care, and see you all soon.